When China's leader says India is a friend and partner, it's never just a greeting. On India's Republic Day, President Xi Jinping told Indian President Droupadi Murmu that Beijing sees India as a good neighbor, friend, and partner, and described the relationship as the dragon and the elephant dancing together. It's a striking choice of words, especially for two nuclear-armed neighbors whose relationship was shaken by a deadly border clash in 2020 and whose Himalayan frontier remains heavily militarized. So is this the start of real normalization or just diplomatic choreography? First, context. India and China share a long disputed border, roughly 3,800 kilometers, and parts of it have been contested since the 1950s. In 2020, tensions exploded into a clash that killed 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers in hand-to-hand fighting. After that, both sides surged troops and infrastructure along the frontier, and the relationship froze. So when Xi publicly talks about healthy and stable relations and urges both sides to expand exchanges and cooperation while addressing each other's concerns, it's Beijing signaling that it wants the temperature lowered, at least for now.
I think that because of the era of Donald Trump, all other parts of the world have a very strong motivation to try to restore normal, peaceful relations with each other, because the United States is dangerously dividing the world right now. And with the U.S. Trying to throw its weight around, Beijing and Delhi are looking to find a rapprochement. I hope that happens in a broader way. I even dream of India and Pakistan finding a way back to cooperation. This is what the world needs more than ever, especially with the United States, in my opinion, acting like a rogue nation. I don't know. I'm not enough of a sinologist to know that, but I think that it is merely a cultural reference and not really meant in some deep or nefarious or hidden way. China thinks in terms of ancient civilizations. It thinks that great powers should cooperate with each other, not be at war with each other. And I think that a lot of the great tensions that have existed between China and India are really due to the British, which is usually the case. They drew an artificial line in the Himalayas that was not historically sound. It was written by a mid-level military officer in 1914 named McMahon. As usual with the British, they created a lot of mischief that has lasted for more than a century afterwards. The world should not be a continuing victim of British mischief, but unfortunately it is almost everywhere right now. And I hope that India and China can surmount this relic of the past.
This is not coming out of nowhere. Both countries began improving ties last year through a series of high-level bilateral engagements. And by 2025, there were concrete steps. Direct flights were set to resume, and both sides talked about expanding trade and investment flows. The key point is this: neither side is claiming the disputes are solved. Instead, this is cautious, step-by-step stabilization, practical cooperation where it's possible, while the core disagreements remain part.
What I would regard is that the two sides open up trade and investment with each other. I would like India to abandon its membership in the so-called Quad arrangement, which is an anti-China informal grouping of the US, India, Japan, and Australia. I regard it as a typical US maneuver, which is to try to divide another part of the world in a kind of imperial divide and conquer strategy. I don't think India has any business in being part of an anti-China group led by the United States. So I would hope that the two could just create normal relations. There's also something called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is the trade grouping that includes China, Japan, Korea, the ASEAN countries, Australia, and New Zealand. India was close to joining that when the group was first put together, but at the last minute decided not to. But I think it would be good if India were to join it. It would strengthen the Indian economy. I hope that it goes beyond that. We are, in substance, entering a multipolar world in which the US is not only not the hegemon, but is not even the dominant country. Yes, an important country, but the US, Russia, China, India are all very major powers, and the world is entering a multipolar period. Moreover, the US is trying to weaken, if not destroy, the UN. It has walked out of more than 30 UN organizations. It uses its veto. It's slashing its payments to the UN. And this is very bad for everybody, for Pakistan, for India, for everybody, to have a weak United Nations. And so I believe that the major countries should get together, work together to support the UN-based system, even if the United States is opposed to it or taking steps to undermine it. The rest of the countries of the world should be supporting it.
The biggest reason this thaw is fragile is simple. The border dispute has not gone away. Yes, there have been disengagement steps at key friction points in recent years, including Depsang and Demchok. But disengagement is not the same as resolution. The line of actual control remains disputed, and both sides still watch each other's moves with deep suspicion, and that mistrust spills onto other flashpoints, including projects linked to China's relationship with Pakistan. In January 2026, India objected again to activity in the Shaksgam Valley area, saying it is Indian territory and rejecting the 1963 China-Pakistan boundary agreement as illegal and invalid.
India considers 1963 agreement between Pakistan and China as illegal.
China, in turn, has rejected India's objection.
首先，你提到的领土属于中国领土，中方在自己的领土上开展基础设施建设无可非议。中国和巴基斯坦已于上个世纪。
So even as diplomacy warms, the strategic fault lines remain. Then there's the economy, and it cuts both ways. Trade continues, but India's concern is the imbalance. India's trade deficit with China remains a persistent political and economic issue, and it shapes how New Delhi looks at Chinese investment and imports. At the same time, China also has incentives to keep ties steady. It wants predictable regional conditions while it manages a tougher global environment, including a more combative US posture. In fact, even the earlier push to resume flights and deepen economic flows was explicitly described as happening against the backdrop of President Donald Trump's confrontational foreign policy. In other words, this thaw is not only about goodwill, it's also about self-interest.
These are two giant economies. China is the most successful industrial economy in the world today. India is a rapidly developing economy. India would benefit enormously from active trade, sharing of technology, joint ventures, and investments, both directions, with China. So there are big gains from trade that could be achieved. Because of the politics of the two countries, the hostility, those gains are not being achieved right now. And both sides would benefit enormously from trade. If I might add, if by some wonderful miracle India and Pakistan would ease or solve the tensions and begin to trade with each other, both sides would benefit enormously. That's the logic of win-win based trade. So this, I think, is the underlying motivation that is underway right now. For a while, India thought that it would be the replacement of China as the U.S. best friend. In other words, the U.S. was going to be antagonistic to China. India would slip in and play the role that China once played in America's supply chains. I told my friends in India that I thought that was very, very unrealistic because the United States is too unstable and too protectionist and too arrogant to have real friends. And they said I was wrong, but events proved that I was right. Given that, I think that India is recognizing that it should be looking to a diversified set of trade partners, not mainly to the United States, in order to achieve its economic progress. And that's why India just signed an agreement with the European Union, after all. This was big news. So I think that what is underway is an attempt by the countries outside of the U.S. not to be divided by the United States. This is a very good question because China is a country of 1.4 billion people. India is a country of almost 1.5 billion people. The stakes for the two countries is vastly, vastly, vastly more important than the precise line of the border. And for the 2.9 billion people to be, in a way, held up in their progress by a border dispute makes no sense, especially since the border dispute goes back to 1914 and the typical, I think, irresponsible behavior of the British Empire at the time. I think that it really makes sense for India and China to find a way to surmount that historical legacy of Britain. Mr. Starmer is on his way to Beijing now. Maybe Britain, just once in its history, could say, I'm sorry. Britain invaded China in 1839 in the First Opium War. It invaded China again in 1856. It set in motion a series of disasters. Britain, of course, colonized the South Asian subcontinent, including today's Pakistan and India and Bangladesh. And Britain created the border problems that confront India and China. Britain made a disaster in the Middle East with Gaza and Palestine by completely inappropriately behaving towards the Arab world and, in fact, towards everybody in a round of continuing duplicity. Maybe Britain should have some humility and say it's sorry to all the problems that it has left to the modern world, and maybe a visit to Beijing would be a good time to do it. I'm not holding my breath that that's going to happen, but it's just a thought that came to my mind.
Put all of this together, and you get the shape of the moment. There are visible signs of thaw, high-level meetings, talk of flights, practical cooperation, and warm public messaging. But there are also hard limits. The border is unresolved, political trust is thin, and regional frictions, including India's objections tied to China-Pakistan arrangements, keep resurfacing. So for now, what looks most realistic is this: stability without compromise, a relationship that both sides want to keep functional, but not one that either side is ready to fundamentally transform. If the next year brings fewer border flashpoints and more predictable engagement, this could turn into a lasting stabilization. But if one incident occurs along the line of actual control, or if economic and regional frictions sharpen, the warmth in the language can evaporate quickly. So what's the symbolism? But track the border. That's where the truth of this relationship always shows up first.